All right, everybody, buckle up because today we're diving headfirst into one of the darkest chapters of internet history, the Three Guys, One Hammer video.
And we're not here for the shock value. This case really forces you to think about human nature, the dark side of the early internet, and all the unanswered questions even a viral video like this can't answer.
Exactly. And to help us unpack all of this, we're going to be looking at excerpts from this YouTube video by Magnus Mephisto. And they really go in depth here. Just so you know, the original video is in Spanish, so we'll be translating and summarizing as we go.
Yeah, and it's really important to remember when this all went down. It's 2007, the internet's kind of like the Wild West, and suddenly, bam, this incredibly violent video just appears.
It's like opening Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
And for anyone who needs a quick refresher, the video shows these three Ukrainian teenagers, Igor Suprunyuck, Viktor Sayenko, and Alexander Hanyuk, and they're committing these murders.
Yeah, and what makes this case even more wild is that they get caught because they're trying to sell a stolen phone.
Classic true crime.
Seriously. Happens more often than you'd think. Criminals, even the really bad ones, they can be tripped up by the simplest things, like needing some fast cash. But what's really fascinating here is how these, what you might call regular teenagers, become even more disturbing as we dig deeper into this source video.
Okay, so let's talk about these teenagers then, Igor, Viktor, and Alexander. The video isn't just showing us their crimes, it tries to show us who they were. You know, they came from stable families, were doing okay in school at first.
Right, and that's what makes it so unsettling. If it was just troubled kids from broken homes, maybe it'd be easier to explain away. But this case throws those assumptions out the window. It makes you think about how people who seem normal can do such horrible things.
Yeah, like where does it even start? Well, the video says, for Igor at least, it started with an obsession with Hitler. He even said they shared the same birthday. Then he starts talking about being a Superman, someone above everyone else's weakness, that kind of thing. And then it all escalates. They start torturing and killing animals, filming it all like it's some sort of twisted rehearsal.
And that filming, that's important. That shows they were thinking about this beforehand, that it wasn't random. They wanted to watch it again. You know, it's like they're playing a part, getting lost in this horrifying fantasy. And then you add the Nazi stuff on top of it all. It's like there's this whole messed up ideology going on.
Right, and then there's Alexander, the third guy. He eventually backs out of the animal killings, but he doesn't go to the police or anything. He just sticks with Igor and Viktor. Why do you think someone would do that? Knowing what's going on and just staying quiet?
Yeah, that's the question that hangs over this whole thing, isn't it? Is it fear? Some messed up loyalty? Or is it something darker, like he's into the violence, even if he wasn't doing it himself? It just shows how complicated group dynamics can be, especially with stuff this extreme going on.
Yeah, it's like the more we learn about them, the creepier they get. So we've got the background now, but let's get into the crimes themselves. Just a heads up, some of this is going to be tough to hear, but it's important to understand how bad this all was.
And I think it's important for everyone to remember, we're getting all of this from a YouTube video, right? It seems like they used other sources, sure.
Right.
But you always have to remember, there could be bias or things that aren't quite accurate.
Oh, absolutely. We always want to keep that in mind.
It's like anything else, right? You see something online, gotta take it with a grain of salt, even when it's this intense.
Right, for sure. So, knowing that, the video goes on to describe this awful string of attacks. They often just targeted random people who seemed vulnerable. One that stuck with me was this guy, Sergei Yatsenko. He was 48. He had just recovered from throat cancer, actually. The video says he could only talk in a whisper because of it.
Jeez, imagine going through something that awful, beating it, and then becoming a victim like that. That just shows you never know what's going to happen.
It's just awful. They attacked him with a hammer, stabbed him, and, well, I don't think we need to get too graphic here, but it's just unimaginable how brutal it was.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting, you know, from a psychological point of view. The level of violence, it was way more than they needed to just, you know, stop him. It makes you think it wasn't just about killing, it was about control, about making him less than human.
Chilling. And it wasn't just Sergei. There was Ekaterina Ilchenko, just walking home from a friend's place, Roman Tatarevich, a homeless man trying to sleep. It's like they were going after the people who couldn't fight back.
And that's what makes it so terrifying.
Yeah.
There's no motive, no pattern. Anyone could be next, you know?
And the fact that they filmed all of this, the source even says they wanted to make money selling snuff films, which is just a whole other level of messed up.
You know, that's something you hear a lot about this case, but we got to be careful here. Just because the video exists doesn't mean they were trying to sell it. You know what I mean? It's easy to get caught up in the rumors, especially online, but we got to stick to the facts.
Yeah, you're right about that. So we've got these horrible crimes. We're trying to understand what these guys were thinking. And then, and this is where it gets really weird, it all ends because they tried to sell a stolen phone.
It does feel kind of convenient, right? Like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
But it also shows how desperate they were. They were so focused on getting some cash, they didn't even think about getting caught.
Right. So they go to this pawn shop to sell this phone. And what happens?
Well, the guy running the shop, he smells a rat. He stalls them, calls the cops, and just like that, it's over. But here's the thing. As the police start looking into everything, things get even weirder. Remember how we said there might be more to this than we see at first?
Oh, yeah, that definitely caught my attention. What'd they find?
So this name pops up, Danila Kozlov. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Danila Kozlov. Okay, yeah, now we're getting to the good stuff. What about this Kozlov guy?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? His name comes up, but the details are so fuzzy it's like trying to grab smoke. Igor's own father, he actually claimed there was this whole cover-up going on.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, he said Kozlov, he came from money, had all the right connections, and basically they just made him disappear to protect their own.
Man, that's like something straight out of a movie. And it makes you think, even if that's not what happened, why are we so drawn to those kinds of stories,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's something about a cover-up, a hidden truth, that just grabs people. It's like we want justice, but we're also kind of suspicious of authority, especially when something this awful happens.
Totally. It's like we want to believe that someone out there knows what really went down, even if it's worse than what we've heard. So with all these loose ends, this cover-up thing, what happened at the trial? Did anything come out then?
Well, at the trial, Viktor, the second guy, remember? He says he was basically under Igor's spell, like he was brainwashed or something. Said Igor threatened him, that he was too scared to say no.
Wow, that just adds a whole other layer to this whole thing. Imagine being in that position, stuck between this scary dude and what could happen if you don't go along with it.
Right. It makes you think, could Viktor have been so manipulated by Igor that he wasn't really in control? The court didn't buy it, but it's a question that's still out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, where do you draw the line between being influenced and being responsible for your own actions, especially in a case this extreme?
Exactly. And get this, later on, Viktor actually takes back his confession. So was he telling the truth the first time, trying to blame Igor? Or did he just crack under pressure? We might never know for sure.
It's like a puzzle with half the pieces missing. So what was the verdict? Did they figure any of this out?
Well, in the end, both Igor and Viktor got life in prison, and Alexander, he got 9 years. But it doesn't really feel like the end, does it?
No, not really. This whole thing, this video, it's like this dark stain on the internet, you know? And even though these guys are locked up, it makes you think about some messed up stuff, about what people are capable of.
Right. And it really shows you how important it is to be careful about what you see online, especially these days. It's so easy for rumors to become facts, and before you know it, everyone's believing something that's not even true.
That's a good point. So for you, what's the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this, from this whole deep dive into Three Guys, One Hammer?
I'd say be curious about these kinds of stories, but don't believe everything you hear. Do your own research, look at all sides, and never forget about the real people who are hurt,
Well said. This case shows that sometimes the most disturbing mysteries are the ones that stick with us long after the story's over, the ones that make us look inside ourselves and question everything. And on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the dark side of internet history. Until next time, stay curious, keep asking questions, and remember, the truth is out there. But sometimes the most important answers are the ones we find within ourselves.